Hello, gang, and welcome back to Pop Culture Addicts. I am Tim. I am your host, and this is the show that's made by this here nerd for all of you there nerds. So glad to have you. Now, our guest today is a longtime comic book creator and artist. He's done pencil, he's done ink work, a lot of cool things on the comic book behalf. Now, in 1975, he was one and a half of the creative team that brought forth a character by the name of Captain Canuck. Now, that was the pages of comic books all over the great country of Canada. Now, in 2012, Captain Canuck was brought back to life and the pages of comics again. Not only does Captain Canuck deal with comic book nemesis, but he also deals with real life issues too, including most recently the trade wars that sparked off between the United States and Canada back in 2025. Now, in our chat tonight, we're going to discuss the origin of our guest. We're going to talk about what led them to the comic book world, their inspiration behind Captain Canuck, and how they've kept a character who was started almost 50 years ago relevant in today's society. And there's other things we're going to talk about as well. I am excited to welcome Richard Cumley to Pop Culture Addicts. Welcome to the show, Richard.
Happy to be here.
All right. Well, thank you very much. So the first thing that I like to do with every new guest that I have come on the show, Richard, is that, and I do this for two reasons. Number one, I'm an inquisitive person. I like to know what makes a person tick and why they do what they do. Why do they choose to be the person that they are and get involved in the work that they do? And then secondly, as I said in the introduction, I'm a nerd, and us nerds love a good origin story of our heroes. So in tonight's episode, you are the hero of the story. So in the story of Richard Cumley, what made you decide to get involved in comic books?
It's more of a person than an event.
Okay.
I am, around the age of 12, I decided that I would, work in visual arts somewhere. And I worked as a sign painter in sign shops for during high school. Then right after high school, very shortly after high school, I moved to Winnipeg, Manitoba, which we lived about 60 miles west of Winnipeg, and I got a job as a crest designer. And I'm talking, you might call them patches, you know what I mean? Sports and all, of course, this is long before computers. So it was everything was hand drawn. And I graduated into embroidery design, and then I worked for a while as a graphic designer. I did fashion styling in Winnipeg and Montreal were big garment industry towns in Canada at the time, in North America, in fact. And I was, that was kind of the direction I thought I might end up going. And then at church, I met a fellow by the name of Ron Leishman, a friend by the name of Ron Leishman. We became friends like almost instantly. Cartoonist. He had taken, I had started to take a course called Advertising Art at Red River College in Winnipeg in 1970. I only took the first term. It was like, a 2-year course, 4 terms. I took the first term and went back to work. I got some offers to do fashion styling, and I thought that's what I was going to do. And I didn't go back to school because I thought I was going to go kind of in a different direction than advertising art anyway. So, but it was Ron Leishman who, he's a cartoonist. He is a cartoonist. Toonaday.com is his website, and it's a lot of fun, his website. Toon, Toon, aday.com. Right, and Ron he's been doing that site for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And you can get 3 times a week, you can get a free cartoon in your email. And when you see the cartoons, you'll see, they're a lot of fun. He's got a really, really neat style. So Ron said to me, there should be a Canadian superhero. We should have our own. And of course, he's looking at Captain America and thinking, why don't we have a Captain Canada kind of thing? And now there was already well, I found this out in 1973. I met him in 71. It was 1973 that I started to get serious about it. We talked about it, but we were busy and nothing really happened. In 1973, that's when I started to get serious about the idea. And I saw that there was already 2 or 3 Captain Canadas out there. One of them was had moose horns, and the other one wore a Zorro hat, and I can't remember the third one. Anyways, they were all kind of spoofs.
Sure.
But Ron had recommended we go with Captain Canuck, and that's what we ended up doing, going with Captain Canuck. I started seriously working on it later in 1974. And at that time, over all of that time, Ron was working in Alberta, northern Alberta, in the oil fields because it paid well, and he was saving up to serve a mission. Ron and I are both Latter-day Saints, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Okay.
And he decided he wanted to serve a mission, and so that's why he was taking those kind of jobs. Really high paying. They're not easy jobs.
Sure.
You're in the cold, all of that stuff. So he left in the beginning of January of 1975, and I'd already started working on the project. Ron and I stayed in touch all the time. My original thought was that we were going to do it together. But A, he had other plans, and B, his drawing style is very cartoony. It's a very humorous, cartoony style. And
yeah.
And but anyways, it was him who got me on this path. I got the first issue ready by early 1975, and I actually approached one publisher in Canada. I never even thought of approaching any American publishers,
Sure.
with Marvel or DC, for example. I only approached one, and that was Harlequin Romance. Do you know who Harlequin Romance is?
I do.
Anyway, they're big. They're a big publisher of romance stories, but they were interested. They would have published it, and I was seriously leaning towards that. But the bookkeeper at JD Products, where I worked as a crest designer and embroidery designer, highly recommended that I not go with them. They would own the rights. They would be able to dictate. You know what I mean? They would be able to, if they didn't like me, they could fire me and still maintain the rights. Blah blah blah. And he said, I'm pretty sure we can get government money to start a publishing company. Never did get any government money, even after some tedious paperwork and tedious meetings. Never got a dime. But I proceeded anyways. I borrowed $8,000 with the help of my parents, co-signing for me.
Okay.
And that's how we got started. The first 3 issues were all printed in Winnipeg, Manitoba. They all had print runs of 200,000 copies. Nearly all the distribution was done via newsstand, mass market distribution, newsstand distribution. Okay. So it was well received. I didn't expect how well it was received in Canada, and it got a lot of media coverage in the United States as well.
Yeah.
Time Magazine, for example, did a story on it shortly after it came out. And then, of course, that all helped with the sales. And the sales of the first issue were good. And as typical with comic books, the second issue wasn't as good. Picked up again in the third issue. Another fortunate thing was that the newsstand distributors were kind to me, and I got the returns back, which I was able to resell to jobbers that bagged them and sold them in discount stores as bag sets with other other comic books like Marvel and DC. Right. This was pretty darn common back then.
Yes.
You name the discount store like a Woolworths or Woolco.
Yep.
I don't know if you had a Woolco in the States or not, but
No, not a Woolco, but I remember getting discount bags at we had a Ben Franklin, a little
yeah,
5 and dime store, and
yeah.
when I was a kid, I could get them there.
Now, and so, and they would be distributed all across North America. So, and that's how, now the first three issues were distributed across Canada and also in about, I don't know, half a dozen border states, Michigan being one of them. In fact, Michigan was the first one to get distribution. And Marty Hershink, you know him? Who he
I
is
don't think I do.
out of Detroit. Anyways,
I've heard of the name, but I don't think I've ever met them or
yeah,
really done
he's
much.
a bit of a historian.
Okay.
And he said, and because I've been a guest at some of his Comic Cons in Michigan, Detroit, and other parts of Michigan, and I always get a very warm reception by Michigan comic book collectors. And I asked him once, how come people are so, know about Captain Canuck so much in Michigan, and they're so nice? And he said, because Michigan was the first state to receive copies of Captain Canuck on the newsstands when it first came out. So,
Okay.
I get, anyways. So that was the beginning. I basically ran out of money. We had the fourth issue ready to go. George Freeman and Claude Saint-Aubin came along just as I was finishing the second issue. And they were godsend. I mean, I needed help. I was doing everything, selling advertising space and getting licensing deals and dealing with the printers and the distributors and on and on and on. And, it was, we had a lot of mail order ads, and that was a constant, filling those mail order ads and replying to fans and all of that stuff. So anyhow, in August of 1976, we left Winnipeg and moved to Cardston, Alberta, a small town near the border of Montana, 7 miles from the border of Montana. And we ran the newspaper there for 5 months. It was a newspaper that had a lot of good cartoons in it. And so, once we realized we liked the experience, my wife and I were married in Cardston, Alberta, a year prior to that. And so because Cardston at that time was the only place where there was a Latter-day Saint temple, so that we went there to get married. And so we moved up to Calgary, and eventually I found investors and we got going again with Captain Canuck in Calgary, 1979 and 1980. And then that came to an end. It's a long story, but I went back to work as a commercial artist. We all did. All three of us did. We went back to working as commercial artists, and then we moved. My family and I moved to Ontario in 1985, and I got and then I did Captain Canuck again, 90 approximately 92 to 96. There was 4 issues and a newspaper strip.
Okay.
And then it was licensed. To a publisher out of Manitoba. And then you mentioned 2012. Actually, it was around 2010 I first started working with Fatty Akim, which is now Lev Gleason Publishing.
Okay.
With it, the imprint is Comic House. And I started working with him back then. And then 2014, we published the first issue, which was the summer special of 2014. And then the next year, it became, it was published more or less on a regular basis.
All right, nice.
So that's a quick overview of the publishing history.
Okay. So let's go back to a little bit more about you, though. What got you interested in wanting to be a comic book writer, creator, artist, all these things? Was there a particular comic book character that really kind of drew you in as a young man?
No, I mean, I liked comic books. I didn't buy them or collect them back then. I liked them. I mean, I worked, like I said, I worked as a commercial artist. I also did portraits too, as well. And, it wasn't really until Ron suggested that, that I really started to look at comic books more seriously.
Okay.
And I probably Superman was probably my prefer, and Batman were my
Sure.
favorites. But there was a lot of other characters and a lot of artists that I liked, and I really started looking at them. And because if I was going to write and draw comic books, then I better study the medium, and which is
Fair
what
enough,
I did.
yeah.
And
get versed in it. Sure.
yeah. So, and then that was really the beginning of my fascination with comic books. So,
Okay. It's kind of interesting, you two. You mentioned working in a sign shop. My dad's a sign maker by trade, so and as a young man, I worked for my dad in his sign shop. I painted sign faces. I all the painted the letters and all the art on it and all that type of stuff. But yeah, I now, did you ever do any like pinstriping by hand, because I know a few guys who do pinstriping and graphics on vehicle sides, freehand with paint. And I just think that's one of the most incredible skills.
yeah. Those are the kind of guys you want to perform appendectomy on you if there's nobody else around.
Steady hands.
Yeah. So no, I did I did lettering. I learned how to do lettering when
Okay.
in my early teens, and then I started making signs for stores, grocery store, Safeway, Sand store, convenience store, etc. And those would be mostly indoor signs, show cards, and I did truck
Sure.
lettering and all of that stuff too. So yeah, I did it all. I was good enough that it looked professional, but I didn't get to that level that we're talking about pinstriping.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, it's a really unique skill for anybody who's listening or watching and has never watched somebody pinstripe or paint graphics or letters freehand with they're holding the brush just like this, and they're just flowing, and honestly, check it out on YouTube. It's a really cool skill, and it's kind of, for me, it's kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of people who do that or can do that. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a rare skill. Even just lettering by hand, doing sign lettering by hand. There's not very many that do it anymore. It's all computer generated, plastic letters, blah blah. Yeah.
Yeah. My dad does mostly vinyl these days. Vinyl graphics and vinyl lettering and all that type of stuff. Yeah, and that's still a decent amount of work, and there's still there's still skill attached to that, but it's a different system. It's a different career type than it used to be back in the day. Okay.
Yeah.
So you also mentioned that some of the inspiration behind the story of Captain Canuck when you guys were making him in 74, 75. 75 was 1 year before yours truly was created here. So, but I have a friend from Montreal. He's a good friend and supporter of the show. His name is Phil Better, and he wanted to know what was the spark that made you guys say, I want to make the original when you guys were originally coming. What was the thing that really made you say, this is why I want to make a comic book?
Well, the big spark, I think, first of all, was we felt, why couldn't we as Canadians have our own sort of nationalistic superhero character? somebody who could be somewhat iconic with, in connection with the country. So that was, kind of the motivation. But, and also to be able to create stories, with this character and build a fan base for him was the other big motivation. So, and just to be able to, so, I think myself and other artists who like to draw, that's a big part of the motivation, trying to do it, it's constantly trying to create something that's better than the last thing you created, the last image that you drew. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's that constant feeling of, okay, this is going to be even better this time, or you know what I mean? And so, and of course, and a lot of times it's a matter of, now that we're on this road, I got to get it done. I mean, there's that thing, okay, I've got to get so much work done here. I've got to get so many pages penciled and inked and colored, and
right.
Yeah.
Start feeling
Then
the
that
pressure of the
part kicks
deadline.
in. Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. Well, I hope that answers that for Phil. I like that answer. But your answer there also highlights another. You're just setting these up for me really well, so I can lead into the next question. So I appreciate that. People are going to start thinking this was rehearsed. It was not. All right.
No.
So, you talked about having, the need to set deadlines and the feeling, the pressure of getting these things done. I got to get so many pages done here, so many things done here. Now, obviously being an independent comic creator is not an easy gig. You have to be willing to push the brand forward, even when you may be tired and maybe you're in need of a break, to be able to step back and kind of recollect your wits a little bit. But what lessons have you learned along the way that helped you through this process, and do any of those lessons ever show up in your work?
Well, first of all, let me say that I was very new to the field of comic books, brand new. And I mean, I could draw, but my artwork wasn't at the level of Neil Adams, for example. And
Sure.
so, and I'm
Okay.
trying to get there. I'm trying to get closer to that level and I'm not a big fan of Neil Adams, by the way, but I'm just giving you as an example. That's somebody I met. Yeah.
Sorry, that amuses me.
Yeah. Well, Neil, he's somebody that I met in 1975. I went to New York City to see a licensing agency, and DC Comics was very kind to me. Editors over there had me come by, and then they gave me Neil's address, and I popped into his studio and chatted with him for a few minutes, and it was all very nice, all very nice. But I think that once you're set a course, you're going to publish. And we promoted the fact. We sent news releases out that we're coming up with a comic book series, and it's going to come out. At the beginning, we were coming out every second month. It was going to be a bi-monthly, and it was harder. Even meeting that schedule, it was difficult with everything else that had to be done to try and stay afloat, because the big challenge was to make it financially viable. Okay. I was fortunate that I got a licensing deal in the beginning with Tam O'Shanter out of Montreal to make tops and pajamas and T-shirts, etc., and a few other things like that helped us. But it was a tough business, especially we're relying on newsstand distribution for our nearly was 98% of our sales. Now, in 75 was the beginning of direct market sales, the very beginning. Phil Suling, if you've ever heard that name. I met Phil in Brooklyn, and he had a very strong Brooklyn accent too, by the way. So very strong. So which was fine. But he bought 1,500 copies from me. And then later on, he bought more and more as he grew. We think there were 4 or maybe 5 comic book stores in all of Canada in 1975. So eventually, we started supplying them, and as the 70s rolled on, more and more comic book stores opened up, and then into the 80s, they continued to grow, and then that became the primary market eventually. Now, what was the original question again,
Just,
Tim?
what lessons you had learned along the way,
Oh,
and if any of those lessons showed up in your work.
Okay. Well, one of the lessons I learned is that I could improve and we did improve. Every issue was better than the last. And then when George, and especially when George came along and became the primary illustrator, it really improved again. You know what I mean? George is a terrific artist. He's got a lot of fans, George. Often, I've been to many places, and people tell me how much they love George Freeman's work. So I guess one of the lessons I learned is, finding good people like George was essential.
Okay.
And Claude Saint-Domingue. Claude literally just showed up at my doorstep, and from Montreal. He might have spoken 15 words of English. And some of those words were, "I come to help you with the comic." So he still has he knows a lot more English now, but he still has the thick accent,
Sure.
And he lives in Alberta now. But yeah. So yeah, I mean, having the right people on your team, one of the big lessons I learned. I mean, and the fact that not only do you need to continue to improve the product, the output, but
Right.
you can, you know what I mean? Not only do you need to, but you can. It will happen,
Right.
if one sets one's mind to it. So
Okay.
There you go.
Good. Great answers. All right. I liked the detour to get to them, and yeah, good answer. Good way to wrap it up. Okay. One of the things I learned about just recently, and I didn't know this was a thing until honestly the last couple days, and I was able to watch a few episodes, was the animated web series that came out and had some really big names attached to that in both the acting and voice acting world. This series was no slouch, and it's pretty entertaining. So my question is, how involved were you in the making and creation of that series? And then would you like to see that make a comeback?
I wasn't heavily involved in it. That was all Fadi Hakim's work as a producer, and he put a lot of effort into that. And he was able to get these big names, and a lot of the music was really people wondered how on earth he got those particular pieces of music and those artists to agree, etc. Yeah, he did a great job. My contribution was as a story consultant, and and I have a 5-word part in the first episode, and I say something like, "Is that a bomb?" I think that's what I say, and I can remember having to be in the sound booth and saying it at least a dozen times before they were satisfied with my delivery. So that was those are my main contributions.
You developed the concept, you developed okay, very good.
Yeah.
And is that a bomb? Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Or I think that's a bomb. Whatever. Yeah.
I think that's a bomb. Either way, is that a bomb or I think that's a bomb? Either way, you were concerned about the possibility of there being a bomb.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. All right. All right, so Richard, sometimes our biggest projects or best known works aren't always the things we want folks to remember us by, or just we may feel that another project deserved more attention than it got. So what's the project aside from Captain Canuck that you would like people to know more about and possibly even support?
Well, I have a website called comelyart.com.
Okay.
So comely ART. And that art has maybe a couple hundred different images, which are available for license. There's a licensing agency actually based out of Minneapolis that handles the licensing of those images. And this is some images that people might use on publishers might use. So
Okay.
and I don't make I make very little money off of that website, but it showcases work that I've done over more than 50 years. So we celebrated the 50th anniversary of Captain Canuck last year. Last year was the
Mm-hmm.
50th anniversary. I started in 75. And so, I mean, I am still working with the publisher still, but most of the work is now being done by Fatty Akim. He's got a publisher, Keith, who and other people involved. I'll do covers. I'll write stuff for the comics, but most of the work now is done by other people. And there's lots of
Okay.
people who are anxious to write and illustrate Captain Canuck, and I'm happy about that. I have done the other big project that I'm working on right now. I have been for months. Is an autobiography and the history of Captain Canuck, and
Okay.
they've started a production company here in Canada and started shooting a documentary on Captain
Oh, neat.
Canuck. Yeah. So, and the target for that is to air next summer. So,
Okay.
we're more than a year away from that.
Okay.
And the book will come out at the same time. The book will have a lot of illustrations and a lot of photographs in it. But I mean, I so in reality, I the amount of time that I spent working on Captain Canuck over the 50 years is dwarfed by the amount of time I spent doing all kinds of other illustration work. I did editorial illustration.
Right.
I did a couple of other comic strips. Wabbits is one of them. I did Trumpet and Friends as from 80. It was at 86 to 91, which was a weekly newspaper feature. I did a lot of illustration for advertising.
Okay.
Children's books. I illustrated a number of children's books. So, and I did portraits and storyboarding for commercials. And the reality is that it's not that I crave to have all these diverse opportunities. It's just that I have 8 children, and I had to work in where I could find it, kind of thing. And
Sure.
even I haven't done signs in a long, long time, but there were times when I would do sign work. Somebody would need a sign, and hey, I'll paint a sign for you. You know,
Absolutely.
and so I've been self-employed for most of my working years, and so yeah, I've done a lot of other. Early on, I wanted to be a fine artist and do paintings, but that was I just didn't. It just didn't seem to be viable. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It just when you got mouths to feed and you're trying to sell a
Oh, yeah.
painting.
Yeah.
Now that I'm sort of semi-retired, I can think about doing those kind of things. But first, I've got to finish this book. The other
Okay.
project that I'm working on is I did a series in 93 to 96, only 4 issues. And and part of the newspaper strip carried some of the story, Captain Canuck Reborn. And Captain
Yeah.
Canuck Reborn is going to be collected into a graphic novel or a
Nice.
trade paperback with a bunch of extras in it. And it'll be recolored, remastered, recolored, additional pages added, etc., etc. So I'm looking forward to seeing that completed and in stores. And that we're aiming to release that in Winnipeg at the Winnipeg Comic Con, which is in late October.
Cool.
And
All right.
and yeah, and there'll be a lot more footage shot for the documentary at that same time too. Apparently, is the plan, because that's where I began. Captain Canuck was in Winnipeg, and
Perfect.
I rented a little office, and then etc. So
Nice way to bring it full circle.
yeah.
Okay. All right, Richard, we've asked you all these serious questions. We haven't asked very many silly questions, but we're going to change that now. We're going to ask you a silly question.
Okay.
And it's not all that silly, but we like to call it a silly question. So the basis for this comes from our show member Kathleen, who participates mostly on our live shows. Her and her daughter were out and about in the town they live in, and somebody asked her daughter this question, but did not ask Kathleen this question. And Kathleen thought that was kind of rude, because she thinks that you should never age out of this question. So that question is, Richard Cumley, what's your favorite dinosaur?
Oh boy. What's a big, long one? The big one with the long neck and the long tail. Which one's that
Brontosaurus.
one? I think you're right. Brontosaurus. Okay, that's the one I go with.
All right,
the big
fair answer. Yeah. Big, gentle giants, veggie eaters.
Yeah.
Cause no harm, do no harm. That's a solid answer.
Yeah.
All right. Very good.
And we're vegetarians too, so we fit right in with those guys.
Well, there you go. It's meant to be. All right. Well, Richard, thank you so much for being on Pop Culture Addicts today. Where can our guests where can our viewers and listeners go to find out more about our guest, Richard Cumley?
Two places, two sites that I can think of, and that's levgleason.com. Lev Gleason, GLEASON.com. That's the publisher, and then my website, cumleyart.com. So those are two places to go. Mind you, you can just punch in Captain Canuck and a whole bunch of stuff will come up. In Google,
it does.
You know what I mean? Tons of stuff, and you probably, So,
yeah, there's a whole lot of Captain Canuck out there if you just Google that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I will make sure that we put those links into our show notes down below so that people can go to your website, go check out the publisher's website, and just do a Google search on Richard Cumley and Captain Canuck, and you'll find out all the things that we didn't talk about tonight. You'll be able to find it all there. Trust me, there's a ton of stuff out there on both of those really cool guys. But this seems like a good time to remind you that if you haven't already, now is a good time to click that like and follow button here on YouTube for Pop Culture Addicts, because doing so helps us to get more amazing guests like Richard Cumley here to come on the show, have these great conversations, and give you guys something to enjoy and to listen to, and be able to be sure to check out Richard's work as well. There's a lot of stuff out there, and go check out his art as well. So, Richard, thank you very much for being on the show. Thank you to everyone for listening and or watching. And until next time, may the force continue to be with you as you live long and prosper. Goodbye. Reference to any specific product or entity mentioned on this podcast does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by Pop Culture Addicts. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. If you have questions about this disclaimer, please contact us via email at info at pcapod.com.